Let me tell you something that most people will never understand. The very thing you hate doing the most is probably the exact thing that will change your life forever. Now that sounds crazy, doesn't it? But stick with me here, because what I'm about to share with you has been the difference between people who struggle their whole lives and people who break through to extraordinary success. You see, we human beings are creatures of comfort. We naturally move toward what feels good and away from what feels bad. That's just how we're wired. But here's the problem with that natural tendency. The things that feel good in the moment are usually the very things that hurt us in the long run. And the things that feel uncomfortable, the things we want to avoid, those are often the activities that would transform our lives if we just had the courage to do them. I learned this lesson the hard way many years ago. I was working in a department store, barely making enough to get by, and I had all these dreams about building something bigger for myself. But every time I sat down to read a book that could improve my mind, every time I thought about making those sales calls that could grow my business, every time I considered doing the hard work of personal development, I found a reason to do something else instead. Something easier, something more comfortable. I hated the feeling of being rejected when I made sales calls. I hated the discipline required to read and study when I could be watching television. I hated the uncomfortable feeling of trying to improve myself when it was so much easier to just stay where I was. But you know what I hated even more? I hated being broke. I hated feeling like my life wasn't going anywhere. I hated looking in the mirror and knowing I wasn't becoming the person I could become. That's when it hit me. I had a choice to make. I could either hate the discipline of doing what I needed to do, or I could hate the results of not doing it. Either way, I was going to experience some form of hate. The question was, which hate was I going to choose? See, here's what I discovered. We all have to suffer one of two pains in life. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Discipline weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons. When you force yourself to do what you hate, you're choosing the lighter weight. You're choosing temporary discomfort over permanent disappointment. Most people spend their entire lives running from discomfort, and they end up living lives of quiet desperation. They avoid the difficult conversations they need to have. They avoid the hard work that would build their skills. They avoid the uncomfortable process of change, and they wonder why their lives never change. But the successful people, the ones who really make something of themselves, they understand this principle. They know that on the other side of every activity they hate doing is the person they want to become. They force themselves to do it anyway, not because they enjoy it, but because they know what it will create in their lives. Think about this for a moment. What is that one thing you've been avoiding? What is that activity that makes you cringe just thinking about it? Maybe it's making those phone calls you know you need to make. Maybe it's having that difficult conversation with someone important in your life. Maybe it's sitting down to plan your finances when you know they're a mess. Maybe it's starting that exercise routine when you haven't moved your body in months. Whatever it is, that thing you're avoiding is like a wall standing between you and your dreams. And every day you don't do it, that wall gets a little bit higher and a little bit stronger. But every time you force yourself to do what you hate, you chip away at that wall. You build strength. You build character. You build the kind of person who doesn't let obstacles stop them. Now let me tell you why our minds resist these important activities so strongly. It's because your brain is designed to keep you safe, not to make you successful. Your brain's primary job is survival, and it interprets any kind of discomfort as a potential threat. So when you think about doing something that makes you uncomfortable, your brain starts sending you all kinds of warning signals. It starts giving you excuses. It starts telling you why you should wait until tomorrow or next week or next month. But here's what you need to understand. That voice in your head that's telling you to avoid the hard work, that's not your friend. That voice is keeping you small. That voice is keeping you stuck. That voice is the reason you're not where you want to be in life right now. The successful people have learned to recognize that voice and do the opposite of what it says. When their mind tells them to avoid something, they know that's probably exactly what they need to do. They've learned to use their discomfort as a compass. pointing them toward the activities that will create the biggest positive changes in their life. Let me give you an example. I know a man who built a multi-million-dollar business, and he told me that for the first 5 years, he hated making sales calls. Absolutely hated it. Every morning he would sit at his desk and stare at the phone, feeling sick to his stomach about the calls he needed to make. But he forced himself to pick up that phone anyway because he knew that on the other side of those uncomfortable conversations was the success he desperately wanted. He didn't wait until he felt like making the calls. He didn't wait until he enjoyed the process. He just did it day after day, month after month, year after year. And you know what happened? Not only did his business grow beyond his wildest dreams, but eventually he actually started enjoying those sales calls. The thing he once hated became one of his greatest strengths. That's the magic of forcing yourself to do what you hate. It doesn't just create external results in your life. It transforms you as a person. It builds confidence. It builds resilience. It builds the kind of character that can handle whatever life throws at you. But most people never experience this transformation because they're waiting for motivation before they take action. They think they need to feel like doing something before they do it. But that's backwards thinking. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. When you force yourself to act despite not feeling like it, you create momentum. And momentum creates motivation. The compound effect of small acts of self-discipline is absolutely incredible. Every time you do something you don't want to do, you make a deposit in your self-respect account. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even when it's hard, you build trust with yourself. And when you trust yourself, when you respect yourself, everything else in your life starts to improve. People start treating you differently because you carry yourself differently. Opportunities start showing up because you've developed the character to handle them. Your whole life starts operating at a higher level because you've built the foundation of discipline that success requires. But it all starts with that first uncomfortable action. It starts with you recognizing what you've been avoiding and making the decision to face it head on. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. So how do you actually do this? How do you build the ability to force yourself to do what you hate? First, you need to get crystal clear about what you've been avoiding. Make a list. Write down all the activities, all the conversations, all the tasks that you know you should be doing, but you've been putting off. Be honest with yourself. Don't sugarcoat it. Once you have that list, pick the one item that would make the biggest positive impact on your life if you actually did it. That's your starting point. That's the thing you're going to force yourself to do starting today. Now, here's the key. Don't try to do it perfectly. Don't wait until you have the perfect plan or the perfect conditions. Just start. Do something, anything that moves you in that direction. If you hate making sales calls, commit to making just one call today. If you hate exercising, commit to just 10 minutes of movement. If you hate dealing with your finances, commit to just organizing one pile of papers. The goal isn't to solve everything at once. The goal is to prove to yourself that you can do hard things. The goal is to start building that muscle of self-discipline. Because once you break through that initial resistance, something magical happens. The thing you thought was so terrible starts to seem manageable. The mountain you thought was impossible to climb starts to look like something you can actually handle. Here's something most people don't understand about this process. The transformation doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, one uncomfortable action at a time. Each time you force yourself to do something you hate, you're literally rewiring your brain. You're teaching your nervous system that discomfort doesn't equal danger. You're proving to yourself that you can survive and even thrive in uncomfortable situations. Let me tell you about a woman I met who transformed her entire life using this principle. She was overweight, in debt, and stuck in a job she despised. She felt overwhelmed by how much needed to change in her life. So instead of trying to fix everything at once, she picked one thing she hated doing, but knew she needed to do. She decided to track every penny she spent. She hated looking at her finances. It made her feel sick to see how much money was going out and how little was coming in. but she forced herself to write down every expense, no matter how small. At first, it was torture. She would put it off until the end of the day, sometimes the end of the week, but she kept doing it. After a few months, something interesting happened. She started making better financial decisions automatically. Because she was forced to confront every purchase she made, she began asking herself if she really needed things before she bought them. Her spending started to decrease without her even trying to create a budget. This gave her confidence to tackle the next thing she was avoiding. She started meal planning, which she also hated because it required thinking ahead and being organized. But she applied the same principle. She forced herself to do it, even when she didn't want to. Soon she was eating better and saving money on food. The confidence from these small wins gave her the courage to start looking for a better job, something she had been avoiding because she was afraid of rejection. One small act of discipline led to another, and another, and another. Within 2 years, her entire life had changed. New job, better health, strong finances, and most importantly, a deep sense of self-respect and confidence. That's what happens when you master the art of doing what you hate. It creates a ripple effect that touches every area of your life. Because when you prove to yourself that you can handle one uncomfortable situation, you know you can handle others. When you build trust with yourself in one area, that trust extends to other areas. And here's what most people don't realize. The feeling of forcing yourself to do something you hate is temporary, but the results last forever. The discomfort you feel for an hour, or a day, or a week creates benefits that compound over months and years and decades. But the comfort of avoiding what you should do, that's also temporary, and the results of that avoidance also last forever. Except those results work against you instead of for you. They keep you stuck instead of moving you forward. They build regret instead of respect. You have to choose your heart. You can choose the heart of discipline, or you can choose the heart of disappointment. But you can't avoid hard altogether. Life is hard either way. The question is, do you want your hard work to be building something, or do you want your hard to be the struggle of dealing with the consequences of not building anything? When you really understand this choice, when you really see it clearly, the decision becomes obvious. Of course, you're going to choose the hard that builds your life instead of the hard that tears it down. Of course, you're going to choose temporary discomfort over permanent regret. Now, let me give you some practical strategies for implementing this in your daily life. The first thing you need to do is create what I call a discomfort schedule. Just like you schedule your meetings and appointments, you need to schedule time for doing things you don't want to do. Pick a time of day when your willpower is strongest. For most people, this is first thing in the morning. Your discipline muscle is like any other muscle. It gets tired throughout the day. So tackle your most dreaded task when you're fresh and strong. Start small, but be consistent. If you hate making phone calls, schedule 15 minutes every morning for phone calls. If you hate dealing with paperwork, schedule 30 minutes every afternoon for administrative tasks. If you hate exercising, schedule 20 minutes every day for movement. The key is consistency, not intensity. It's better to do something small every day than to do something big once in a while. Because what you're really building here isn't just the habit of doing a particular task. You're building the habit of keeping promises to yourself. You're building the habit of following through even when you don't feel like it. Here's another practical tip. Create environmental cues that make it easier to do what you hate and harder to avoid it. If you hate exercising, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Put your running shoes by the door. Make it as easy as possible to take that first step. If you hate making sales calls, have your phone ready with the numbers already dialed. Have your script prepared. Remove every possible obstacle between you and the action you need to take. Because when you're already fighting against your own resistance, you don't need additional friction from your environment. You also need to develop what I call implementation intentions. This is a fancy way of saying you need to decide in advance exactly what you're going to do when your brain starts giving you excuses, because it will. Your brain is going to come up with very creative reasons why today isn't the right day to do that thing you hate. So you need to have your response ready. When your brain says, I don't feel like it today, your response should be, that's exactly why I need to do it. When your brain says, I can start tomorrow, your response should be, the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is right now. Having these responses prepared in advance makes it much harder for your brain to talk you out of taking action. You're not trying to make a decision in the moment when your willpower is low. You've already made the decision when your thinking was clear. Another crucial element is tracking your progress. Keep a simple record of every time you force yourself to do something you hate. This could be as simple as putting an X on a calendar or keeping a tally in a notebook. The act of tracking serves two purposes. First, it gives you visual proof of your progress. When you can see that you've done the hard thing for 5 days in a row or 10 days or 30 days, it builds momentum. You don't want to break the streak. Second, tracking forces you to be honest with yourself. It's easy to think you're being more disciplined than you actually are. But when you have to record whether or not you did what you said you were going to do, there's no hiding from the truth. The key is to get back on track as quickly as possible. Don't let one missed day turn into a missed week. Don't let one moment of weakness become an excuse to give up entirely. The strongest people aren't the ones who never fall down. They're the ones who get back up quickly every time they do fall down. Here's something else that's crucial for long-term success. You need to regularly remind yourself why you're doing this. When you're in the middle of doing something you hate, it's easy to forget why it matters. Your brain will start questioning whether it's really worth it. It will start suggesting that maybe you should just quit and find an easier way. That's why you need to have your reasons written down somewhere you can see them. Not just the surface level reasons, but the deep emotional reasons. Don't just write down that you want to make more money. Write down that you want to provide a better life for your family. Write down that you want to feel proud when you look in the mirror. Write down that you want to know you didn't waste the life you've been given. Let me tell you what happens when you make this choice consistently. When you build the habit of forcing yourself to do what you hate, you develop what I call earned confidence. This isn't the fake confidence that comes from positive thinking or affirmations. This is the deep, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you can count on yourself to do what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not. People with earned confidence walk differently. They talk differently. They handle challenges differently. When a problem comes up, they don't panic or make excuses. They just ask themselves, what needs to be done here? And then they do it, regardless of how they feel about it. This kind of confidence is magnetic. People are drawn to it. Opportunities are drawn to it. Success is drawn to it. Because in a world full of people who are controlled by their feelings, someone who controls their feelings stands out like a lighthouse in the storm. But it all starts with you making the decision to do one thing you hate today, right now. Not when you feel ready, not when the conditions are perfect, not when you've figured out all the details. Now, what would your life look like if you spent the next year forcing yourself to do the things you've been avoiding? What would your business look like? What would your relationships look like? What would your health look like? What would your bank account look like? More importantly, what would you look like? How would you feel about yourself if you knew you were the kind of person who faces challenges head on instead of running from them? How would you feel if you knew you could trust yourself to follow through on your commitments even when it's hard? That person already exists inside you. That strong, disciplined, successful person is already there, waiting for you to let them out. But they can't emerge as long as you keep choosing comfort over growth. They can't develop as long as you keep avoiding the very experiences that would build their strength. The rewards of this way of living extend far beyond just personal accomplishment. When you become someone who consistently does what they hate, you become a person others can depend on. You become someone who inspires others simply by your example. You become a leader not because you have a title, but because you have character. Your children, if you have them, will watch how you handle difficult situations, They'll learn more from what you do than from what you say. When they see you facing your fears and doing hard things, they'll learn that's how successful people behave. You'll be giving them a gift that will serve them for their entire lives. Your friends and colleagues will start coming to you for advice because they'll recognize that you've figured something out that most people haven't. They'll see that you're different. You're not like everyone else who talks about change but never actually changes. You're someone who follows through. You're someone who can be trusted. The financial rewards are obvious. When you consistently do the things that others avoid, you position yourself for opportunities that others miss. You build skills that others don't have. You develop a reputation for reliability that makes you valuable in any market. But beyond all of these external rewards, there's something even more valuable. There's the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you're living up to your potential. There's the peace that comes from knowing you're not wasting your life. There's the pride that comes from looking in the mirror and respecting the person looking back at you. Most people go through life with a nagging feeling that they could be doing more, that they could be better, that they're not living up to what's possible for them. When you make the decision to force yourself to do what you hate, that feeling disappears. You know you're giving your best effort. You know you're not holding back. You know you're becoming the person you were meant to be. This isn't easy work. Nobody said it would be. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. But the fact that it's hard is exactly what makes it so valuable. The fact that most people won't do it is exactly what makes it so powerful for those who will. So I'm going to ask you one more time, what's that one thing you've been avoiding? What's that activity that makes your stomach turn just thinking about it? What's that conversation you need to have? What's that skill you need to develop? What's that habit you need to start? Whatever it is, that's your starting point. That's where your new life begins. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready, right now. The time for excuses is over. The time for waiting is over. The time for hoping that somehow magically your life will change without you having to do anything uncomfortable is over. Your life is waiting for you to claim it. But first you have to be willing to do what you hate. So here's my challenge to you. Before you go to bed tonight, do one thing you've been avoiding. Make one phone call you've been putting off. Have one difficult conversation you've been dreading. Take one action toward a goal you've been ignoring. Force yourself to do it. Not because you want to, but because you know what it will create in your life. And then tomorrow, do it again. And the next day, do it again. Build the habit. Build the discipline. Build the character. Build the life. Because I promise you this, the person you become in the process of forcing yourself to do what you hate will be someone you respect, someone you admire, someone you're proud to be. And that person will create a life that's worth living, a life that matters, a life that makes a difference. The choice is yours. You can keep running from discomfort and wondering why your life never changes. Or you can face that discomfort head on and watch your life transform before your eyes. What's it going to be?